All right, we've been gone for a little bit. To all those fans out there, I just want to assure you we're back, and we're back in a good way here today with Alex Trafton, my buddy, my student of Judo as of the past year, I want to say.
Year.
Alex Trafton, good to have you here at the Flow Factory podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Sweet. Cue the music. So I want to go through a little bit of your CV here just to introduce you and get those people out there listening to exactly why I have you on. And you have a pretty diverse background in so many different things, and I want to highlight those things real quick here. So you are a fighter. You are a professional baseball player, professional football player. You teach the highest level special forces in three continents. You have been security for some of the biggest fashion and music icons on the planet, and there's plenty of other things I could go through.
That's about half, yeah.
Yeah, so we could keep going here, and I'm sure just through our conversation we'll get there. But you're well-traveled.
Yep.
You teach seminars all over the world in hand-to-hand combat, in knife and gun
weapons and firearms, and
you have like you probably have certificates all around and on the ceiling of your office because there's not enough wall space.
I'm poorly organized, so I've probably lost 75% of certificates I've ever gotten. So,
but I'm sure you have a bunch of good stories that we could get into, and I kind of wanted to start with, you know, the humble beginnings, I guess. So probably before college, where you went to UC Berkeley and played baseball on scholarship.
Yep.
What kind of got you into baseball, and what kind of kid were you growing up?
Man, I was born in Chicago. Then we spent time in St. Louis before my family moved to California. So I grew up on the Cubs and the Cardinals, and just my earliest memories were of Cardinals games and Ozzie Smith. I kind of date myself, so I was 1980 shortstop for the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay, good. So we're both old.
Yeah.
And so I was just in love with Oz, and I started playing baseball. I was 5 or 6 years old, and I played baseball and I played soccer. In high school, I played football as well. I was recruited actually to play college football as well as a punter, which is less glorious.
Wow. And you're like, I mean, on the tall end, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'm about 6'4". So, but it was a goalkeeper in soccer, so I was quite a good punter. So I started playing football, and so I got college offers in high school to play baseball at a number of places, and football as well.
It's pretty rare these days, huh? Because most people are so specific in what sport they do, and they do it all year round.
Right.
You were like a 3-4 sport guy, which was normal in the 80s and 90s before.
Yeah, but it was also a bit about, you know, if you read my resume or what I've done, it's a bit kind of my personality to do different things, you know. But my focus was always baseball. That was my true love and my real passion. Football was something I was good at to a competency, but as a baseball player, it was my passion. And so it was a real easy decision to make to go to college to play baseball, especially when a school like Berkeley gave me an offer. And, you know, it would, you know, I don't know if it would have disappointed my parents if I went somewhere else, but I mean,
it leans pretty left for it. Well, I mean, Chicago in general is usually a pretty democratic.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say it's just the city portion versus suburbia.
Right. Well, both my parents have PhDs, and they're both educated, and they're progressive. And, you know, my mom, they grew up kind of in the 60s and 70s. My dad was an anti-Vietnam protester.
Okay.
You know, like.
So you going to Berkeley was like, thank you. You did.
Yeah,
great.
a bit. But my dad also a blue collar guy. He was a mechanic. His dad was a mechanic. All of his family are blue collar people.
Union?
Yeah, his dad was. His dad was. And but they're all blue collar. I mean, they're all pretty right wing people. His family. He's the standout. My mom's from New Zealand. Her dad was a commander in the Navy submarine, on the submariner. And so, but they're all pretty left leaning. And so, but Berkeley is like the exception. I think it's like extreme kind of, if you look at American political discourse, it's pretty far left. I mean, maybe in Europe you'd have some different kind of ways of looking at things, but it's definitely considered left. And it was then, you know, my first year of college was September 11th.
2001.
Yeah. That was like, I was there like 3 weeks, and we're lifting weights, baseball teams all lifting together. And like, because they screwed us and gave us a 6 a.m. lifting slot, so nobody was happy. Everyone's hungover. It smelled like a brewery in the fucking
weight room.
Yeah, of course. And so someone comes running in and says, "Oh, these planes have hit the building." So and then so as this goes on, my parents are both psychologists, so I'm in psychology classes and I'm miserable and I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got this opportunity to go to Berkeley, and all of a sudden, like, this is like this unfolding conflict in the Middle East. And so I started studying Middle Eastern studies. I got into the major, did Arabic, I studied Turkish, I studied Urdu, I studied 3 languages. I did an honors degree. And from that point on, my focus in life was the study of human conflict, interpersonal conflict, global conflict. And so pretty much everything I've done is some way related, whether it's academic or professional or fighting. All of that is related in that central piece to human conflict. And one of the things I think that it was is I was incredibly timid as a child around conflict. Like, fights made me incredibly anxious. And so I had this kind of, like, throughout my life, I've just found these things that kind of terrify or make me uncomfortable, and I challenge them. I used to be really terrified of drowning. So I was living in Australia. I went and trained with the No Limits world champion freediver. And I went to him and I said, I want to not only overcome my fear of drowning, but master being under the water and apnea sports where you're not breathing. And so I trained with him for a year and ended up being his training partner as he was preparing for another run at the world title. And so I never got great at it, but I was definitely, it was one of the ways that I overcame that kind of fear. And so I guess circling back to the Berkeley days, that was that kind of was a pivotal moment, kind of setting my life on course that way.
So prior to 9/11, did you actually have any ambition or any kind of desire to go into world politics and figure out things in the Middle East and try and come to some kind of realization? Or were you just playing ball, eating sausages and drinking Coors Light like every other Midwestern ball player? Yeah, well, I mean, that's right. I mean, I think my record was 18 Coors Lights in one sitting, actually. I recorded so I was not mediocre in any way. I just thought, like, I'd go get through college and I'd get this degree from Berkeley. And so, hey, if I didn't end up in the majors, I could get a job. Yeah. And then what I realized real quick was when I started playing professional baseball, I played 1 or 2 seasons with what was then the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. It's now Tampa Bay Rays. I got signed as a free agent. So, long story, my baseball career, there's a lot of problems I had with, performance anxiety and getting good at performing. Mm-hmm. And I was really extremely talented, ability-wise, but performance had always been an issue for me. And it took me 3 or 4 years to overcome that, to get to a place where I could really be a good baseball player. And so by that time, all my leverage in the draft is gone. So I ended up being a free agent signing. I think I signed for $1,200 or something, right? And a plane ticket. And so I got into playing baseball, and I realized that this isn't like the culture that I liked. It wasn't culturally, there was no intellectual stimulation really, which I'd come to love at Berkeley. Mm-hmm. So I quit. I didn't quit. I retired from baseball. I made an absurd demand of the organization. I didn't quit. I made an absurd demand. Which was what, financial?
Yeah, financial. And you've got to bump me to AA immediately after spring training. And I was already checked out. I hadn't trained in the off season. I gained some weight.
At this point, do you have like an agent or someone looking out for your
best
interest?
I have an agent. Okay. Yeah, I had an agent who was pissed off when I was like, he'd signed me, give me a bunch of free gear and stuff. And then I was like, okay, I'm leaving. So I went, and then I applied to graduate schools.
So you were a pitcher, right?
Yeah, I was a closer. So I went in as a nobody in pro ball. So they kind of like threw me out there. In the first game, I faced 9 hitters. I struck out 8, and they were like, "Who the fuck is this guy from Berkeley?"
At Berkeley. Okay.
Yeah, it was like short season A ball. Mm-hmm. Princeton, West Virginia. It was the smallest town to have a minor league affiliate. So like 2,500 people in this town. So it wasn't like sold out or anything at the game. And so I left, and then I applied, and I got into graduate school. I got into PhD programs in Middle Eastern studies, religious studies, Near Eastern studies, things like that. And
so what was your major at Berkeley?
Middle Eastern studies.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an interdisciplinary major. So you have to take politics and history and Near Eastern studies and languages. And while I was waiting, I wrote a book with I don't want to say he was a colleague. He was this guy in Berkeley. He's a really interesting dude. He was from Mauritius, and Mauritius is this tiny island east of Madagascar, and they're Creole-speaking, part Indian, French speakers. And he was a guy who had just wandered the earth. Like he went to college in Pakistan, left, took a bus, ended up in Switzerland, overland. And so he started taking pictures and writing articles, and he ended up writing for Time, interviewing Nelson Mandela. He walked from Egypt to tip of South Africa. He walked from Alaska to, taking buses on the way, but from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego, interesting guy. So he had all these photos. We got together and wrote this book on some obscure part of Saudi Arabia that sold 9 copies or something.
But I'm sure it's really interesting.
8 of them were to our family, you know. I don't think it's
Signed
interesting.
copy.
Even.
I don't have one.
Yeah, I'll bring you one.
The 10th one.
I went to my mom's for Thanksgiving and I found where they all are. If anyone orders one on Amazon, I'm sorry. They're at my mom's house.
So do you have like an attic full of them, or
I don't even say it's full of them. I don't know even how many we printed. Yeah, I have a box. I have a box of about 30. Yeah, it's more of a coffee table book. Actually.
I get you. I did a series of children's illustration books for mostly that are hanging out in boxes right now too. So I get that.
I wasn't meant to be an author, at least at 23. Yeah.
So going back to your timeline. You graduate from college,
right?
You go into A-ball,
right?
And you make an unrealistic request that gets shot down. So you're now in your early 20s. You have a degree, but you don't have really any direction.
Right, no direction, zero direction. So I want to be an academic suddenly, right? Not suddenly. I'd applied to graduate school in as an undergraduate, but I applied to like Oxford and Berkeley and like University of Chicago high level programs. I didn't get in. This was very selective, and my grades were good. But I'm playing baseball. I didn't even study for the GRE when I took it, and I still did well. But you're talking about people who are academics professionally, and so.
But you didn't have like a life trait and skill you could go out to the workforce with. You had to keep going.
So I looked into like, excuse me, doing a PhD. It's 9 years, 8 years in this department, and I said, it's not worth it. So now I'm just like coaching a baseball team, like a youth baseball team, like just putzing around Oakland.
Enough for beer money.
Not even that. And working, I think I was working at a cafe, like making coffee. And
you're a barista.
I was a barista. That's why I always tell people, I could make a mean cappuccino.
But humble beginnings, man.
Very humble. That was extremely humble. I was sharing an apartment with a physician friend of mine, Pakistani dude, and we lived together in a studio in Lake Merritt, Oakland. We shared the studio. We slept on futon mattresses on the floor. So I'm coaching this team, and one of the parents there runs a massive mutual fund, investment fund. So he goes, you seem like a smart guy. Do you want to work in finance? So I go get this. Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Like opposite to everything you've been Arabic studies.
I'll figure it out, So I'll learn how to use Excel. So I spent 2 years there, and then it was the beginning it was like 2007, so people, they were like handing out bonuses like crazy.
Oh yeah,
here's
this
10 grand.
Is like the height of the market, so
it's
you're
great.
in a good place.
I was happy. Then things went sour, and it was a little bit harder. The money was tighter. They wanted you to do more sales and business development, and so that is not for me. And so I started martial arts. I quit baseball. Started drinking when I was fat.
So did you have any money saved up, or did it all get lost in the bubble?
No, I had a bunch. I had a fair bit. And
so you could make some choices, but you wouldn't be like, okay, I got to survive and work at Mickey D's.
No.
You could actually,
this like we talk about privilege. I had privilege, and so, I'd gotten overweight. So like the last year I was at the mutual fund, I went and started training at this Krav Maga gym. So I'm doing Krav Maga, I'm doing boxing, I'm doing Jiu Jitsu there.
And this is in Oakland?
In Oakland, yeah. Or I think the gym was in Berkeley, but I lived in Oakland. I worked in San Francisco. And so I just said to the instructor who was Israeli, I go, you know what? I like doing this stuff. I got money. I got time. I don't, the market's falling out. There's no jobs. So I'm going to go to Israel for 3 months. So I go to Israel. I wind up being there 3 years.
Nice.
So I show up, and I know one guy from college. His name's Daniel Frankenstein. I swear to God, this is his real name. He'd married an Israeli girl, was marrying her.
So she was now Frankenstein?
No, she kept her name. She's a famous aerial rush chef. She's actually reasonably well known. She hosts a morning show on ABC, national show. Yeah, so she's done well. She's really cool. Anyway, so they kind of like show me around a little bit, and I have one phone number of an instructor there. So I just showed up, start training.
And what is the Krav Maga training? At least the introduction to what is that even?
In Israel, you mean?
Yeah, like what are you doing as training? Like.
It was a bit of like a wild time, like. So I mean, I think like Krav Maga used to be this wild kind of like. I mean, people got like parts of their body bit off in training. Like,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, what does it consist of? You walk in the door. I want to try Krav Maga. Is someone just straight up grabbing you by the balls?
Well, so Not in the regular class. So I showed up at the regular class, right? And I'm training in the instructor, Zev Cohen, who's kind of a legend of Krav Maga. And he says to me, he goes, you should come and train in the advanced group and the instructors group. So that place was pandemonium. Like, it was like, you imagine like a bunch of toddlers like who needed naps, right? But they're like former special forces soldiers and jiu-jitsu guys and kickboxers. And
so at this point, jiu-jitsu was pretty well trained in Israel?
Not really. No. We had like one guy. I had about 10 months of jiu-jitsu training. So I got in there and I was like, people are kicking me. I'm just taking them down and choking them, like rudimentary, like.
But judo's pretty popular in Israel. So was there any people with that background?
Not one. Everybody was if you look at like the Israeli military, where they draw instructors from, they're not Krav Maga kids growing up. They take from two sources basically. They take full contact karate guys and they turn them into instructors, and they take guys from Muay Thai because Muay Thai is huge there. And the logic is that those guys are actually tougher because they're competing. They're actually tougher than a guy who's doing whatever with Krav Maga. I mean, there are some nut jobs in Krav Maga for sure, but. And I had a friend.
And I don't want to denigrate all the work you've done in Krav Maga.
No, it's
go with your most stereotypical version of what.
It's bad here. It's bad. It's commercialized. And my friend, one of my good friends, so I got hooked up with a guy named Ran Nakash there. Nakash had been head of Krav Maga in the army. He had also been the 10-time champion of Muay Thai in Israel, and he was the number 10 cruiserweight contender. So I got into boxing, right? So I started training with him. So I wind up kind of training in his gym, and now I'm a sparring partner because I'm a cruiserweight. So
what's that mean, cruiserweight?
So it's like right before heavyweight. So 201, 91 kilos, I think. So I'm training with this guy, boxing all of a sudden. So I'm there for Krav Maga. All of a sudden I'm fighting in boxing, unlicensed pro fights, right? So it's not like.
Smokers are these called?
I didn't know, a few smokers, but we were like selling stadiums out and like, and so Nakash like was the guy who didn't care if you lived or died.
Watch the American get killed live.
Right.
Is basically how they're selling it.
We used to, so there's 3 ethnic groups that box in Israel. You have like a few Israeli Jews, you have the Russians, and you have the Arabs from Nazareth come down and box with us. And he puts me to spar this Arab guy, and he goes, listen, Alex, I tell you something. I know you're not Jewish, but for him, it doesn't matter. What? I said, no, the guy is going to kill you like you are a Jew. So today you are a Jew, and you're going to box the Arab. And so people were going to the hospital in these inner clubs, right? Like people were going down and they're still getting, like, people jumping in to pull people off.
12-ounce gloves, 16?
Whatever people brought. I'm serious. Like,
one glove?
You'd get out, you'd look at your 16-ounce gloves, and this guy's like in snow mittens, right? Coming at you. And so Nakash gets me in this fight. And he goes, okay, we're putting a big fight. You're going to fight a Russian. So be ready. His name is Yuri, and he's very, they call him brutal. And brutal.
Oh, brutal. Okay.
Yeah, you have to learn. This is in Hebrew, but I'm doing a bad accent, right?
Because that's pretty good.
Right,
actually.
I'm
I know a bunch of
auditioning
Israelis.
for a Sacha Baron Cohen movie, and so he goes, comes to me and goes, listen, Yuri cannot fight now. Why? He is in the fight at the work and he kills someone. And I'm like, I'm trying to act like I'm disappointed. Oh, man, shit, that bummer, But I'm like, thank God.
Is this just for your honor, or are you getting paid?
I think I got 500 shekels, which is $150. But it gets better. It gets better. Here's how I lost money on that. Let me get to how I lost $3,000 on this fight. So I show up to the weigh-in. They find this other guy. I cut like a bunch of weight because Yuri was bigger, and they bring this other guy. So I cut like a ton of weight. I'm way too fast. I don't know what I'm doing. And I show up and I'm like, look like a refugee. And I weigh in, and the guy goes, no, I'm not fighting him. He's too tall. And he walks out of the weigh-in. So I'm trying to rehydrate and stuff. And so Nakash goes, okay, we find someone else. Don't worry. So he finds me, the European heavyweight amateur champion, who has like 60 fights, and I had 2. So
how big is he? Same weight class? But
No. He's, of course, 15, 20 pounds heavier than me, right? From where I was, my weight was. And so Nakash goes, you want to fight? And I go, yeah, I don't want to embarrass myself, so I'll fight him. He goes, good. I knew you're not a pussy, So I turn up to fight this guy. I didn't even know who it was till the guy walked in. And so I'm like emaciated. So I go in and in the first round, I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. I'm moving. I'm taller than him. I'm jabbing. I'm slipping. I'm moving. And I hit him with a hard right hand. And it knocks his mouth guard into the 3rd row. And he, like the Terminator, he just turns his head. It doesn't even go over his mouth guard. Just starts coming at me again. And it broke my spirit. But I said, I'm not going to give up. So I hit him again, and it shatters my hand. and I hit him again, and it shatters my hand some more. And I do like another round or two, and I tell Nakash, I'm like, dude, my hand is shattered. It's like a bag of peanuts. We got to stop this thing because we have to write one day or something. You know? So I go to the hospital. You know, I have to have surgery. But
so you are a pussy.
Yes. In the end, he goes, listen, I don't know. You're going to embarrass us. You know, he goes, I had his shorts on. I didn't have boxing shorts. It has his name on it. He goes, listen, put your arm over my name. As we're leaving, put your arm. Don't let them see my name. And so anyway, I spent all this. So anyway, socialized medicine is great in Israel. Hand surgery and everything. I spent like $2,500 at the hospital. So and then they slide me $150. They're like, hey,
you could basically tip the doctor.
Here's the purse, you know. Yeah, I go to the hospital and they put me it's like I'm the tallest guy in Israel, right? So the nurses, they're all female. They put me in this gown.
Doesn't even reach past your hips.
No, like, yeah. So I'm like trying to like sit and like cross my legs like a British lady.
So you got the tip of your dick hanging out the bottom.
Yeah, just the tip. That was the only tip they got. Yeah. So anyway, while I was in Israel, I needed a visa to stay because I wanted to stay in Israel. And so I'm not Jewish. I'm not going to give you a visa to work or live. So I enrolled in graduate school. I got into a MA program in government at the university called the Ben-Tchumi. In Hebrew, it's the Interdisciplinary Center. And so it's a focus in counterterrorism. So it's probably 70% of the people there are current military Israeli kind of battalion level commanders, like what would be like a colonel, major colonel and above, or lieutenant colonel and above.
But you never, I mean, obviously you're an American, so
right.
You're not enlisted in any kind of formal army for Israel or US or
right. So the other 30% are aimless American Jewish kids, right? Who are like, I'm in Israel, so I'm gonna do a master's degree, and it's a good degree, but it was kind of like these kind of like hardcore serious dudes, me, and then kind of people filling some time.
Lets you stay in the country and
right. And it was a good program. It was actually good. I mean, the Israelis do counterterrorism well. I mean, it depends on hold on. Let me back that truck up. In some ways, they do counterterrorism well. Yeah. If you look at the way they do it. And
so with that experience, you were able to. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of it too much, but you were able to get into being security for these high-profile.
Well, so Nakash, right, was the head of the Krav Maga in the Israeli army. So he left, and our other friend took over, and so they all started a security company in Israel. And so they hired me. They let me. We'll say in case anyone's listening. So, so I'm not like licensed to work in Israel. So I volunteered my time to this company, and so their contracts were to train a few Israeli special forces units, counterterrorism. And a lot of the time, they were doing what are called small unit exchanges. So there would be SEAL team would come, the ODA, which is the Army Special Forces, Green Beret would be there. We'd have Marines and stuff that would constantly come through. And so the instruction would be in English. My English was the best, so I did a lot of that instruction. And so anyway, that was kind of how I got into that world of like pseudo military or police kind of instruction. And we did a lot of work with protection units too, that people that were charged with protecting dignitaries or whomever.
And your Hebrew at the time was pretty good?
It was okay.
Was it enough to get by and translate English to Hebrew?
Yeah, I could have done a lesson in Hebrew and not been laughed out of the room.
Okay. So you were kind of like a translator, intermediary?
No, I taught the lessons in English. If it was in English, they're like, listen, Alex, you're teaching today. We're going for coffee. You know, like how little work could Nakash do, which is not disparaging him, but it was like, a good opportunity for me, and then definitely because I spoke English, it was nice.
Yeah, they're learning too.
But I was teaching like Krav Maga and kickboxing in a gym there. You know, I was teaching all the time into like Israelis. You know, so this was just they were civilians, and this was the military.
So is that what got you involved in close like hand fighting and knife and weapon disarming? And
yeah, I mean, Krav Maga has some of that element to it. I guess it's what it's famous for. I don't really know how good like. Technically it is, like why you wouldn't go learn jiu-jitsu as well. Like I don't understand like if I want to grapple someone, right? I mean, if you look at kind of grappling, how you live through UFC 1, 2, 3 and not see that grappling is such an integral part of fighting, and like
then you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, you are lying to yourself. You are lying to yourself. And I've had this argument till I was blue in the face with other instructors saying, I mean, why didn't you just do jiu-jitsu? Well, because we do Krav Maga. I was like, well, we don't want our students to like leave and go to jiu-jitsu.
Integrate.
I said, yeah, but what do you care?
Yeah.
Right? If If that's what they want, what do you care? Like, so you're going to pretend grappling as a fighting system doesn't exist for business reasons? Like, that's so stupid. Just hire a black belt. You know, in San Diego, if you back your car up, you're going to hit a black belt.
Yeah.
Right? They're everywhere. I mean, that's an infestation here.
Yeah.
You know, just hire one of those guys. You know, yell at them in Portuguese and like, you know, bring them down to the gym and have them.
People will come. Yeah.
And you know what? It'll enrich your students. And so, but the problem was everyone was resistant to that. And so I went out and I was like, well, forget that. So I went out and started boxing. No one wanted to box. Don't box. And I boxed. And then, well, you know, don't grapple. So then I went and did jiu-jitsu, and don't wrestle. Don't do this. And so I went and did all those things. And then 5 years later, when they all realized they need to be doing it, you know, I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu already. I'm a professional boxer. You know, I'm wrestling Erik Paulson. You know, I'm a certified coach in Erik. Like, you're so far behind the curve now, you're never going to catch up. You might as well go and get a job in IT or do something else, because the world of combatives has moved on. It's such a fast-paced world. Like, the people now, if you look at Danaher's guys, right? Look at like Gordon Ryan and his brother Nicky and all of those guys. I mean, look how much further ahead they are than black belts were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not just the jiu-jitsu. Like, that's like the competitive martial arts. That's where everyone gets to see that advancement, right? Because it's on display. Like, the UFC is like a showcase for how far we've come in interpersonal violence, managed in a cage with the referee.
For sure.
But why not take all that and apply it to combatives and apply it to self-defense? Why wouldn't you take that stuff? It's pressure tested. Right? If you look at like Kung Fu, some guy goes, I have these like deadly techniques I can't use. I'm like, well, like, how many people have you murdered? Right? And he goes, well, a rear naked choke is not necessarily as deadly as this technique. Yeah, but I've seen a rear naked choke take down grown men in peak condition, professional fighters. I know it works on those guys. Right?
Yeah.
So it's going to work on drunk Joe Schmo at the bar, for sure.
But the dim mak might also work, and it might kill them and stop their heart in three hits.
Right? It's like that. It's like if he goes, I have this deadly technique. And I go, that's bullshit. And he goes, let me try it on him. I'm like, try it on him.
Just in case.
Wait. I got a guy here who can do this for me. He's gonna stand in for me. Yeah. Right. And so like my whole
Have you seen that McDojo life on Instagram? It's pretty good. They always like find these footage of these sensei types that are usually all look very similar body shapes. Yeah. Never sparred for real in their life.
No cardio.
But they have, but they have ponytails usually. A gi that doesn't cross all the way because their belly's so big. And then they do like these wizardry movements with their hands, and people are flying.
Yeah, it's like a religious experience for these people, and it's just goes to show that, you know, manipulation is it's so easy to do on people that are willing to believe.
Yeah, the cult thing in academies, and I've seen it personally. Where I've done seminars at some places.
Oh yeah,
I see the dynamic between the head sensei and the students, and the way whenever I would show something that everyone looks at him like, is this okay because it's different than what you do? And like it's very closed-minded, but they only can open their mind towards one master. It's very
and yet it happens. There's a culture of that worship in jiu-jitsu too, which is
for sure.
I mean, you look at legitimate martial arts. Like a black belt in jiu-jitsu is the most legitimate rank you can get. Like
I think Corral, but by that point you're already old and
but I'm saying, but even like, but if you took like a black belt in jiu-jitsu and you took a black belt in taekwondo and you took a black belt in karate and you had them fight each other, like you'd know the result of that. Right? I mean, it's a legitimate. Now, some black belts are better than others, and you know, some guy gets a blue belt, you know, online. But at the end of the day, that's still the gold standard in martial arts.
Yeah,
right.
That's pretty general because you get weight classes, athleticism, age. But yeah, I get what you're saying as far as skill. That's proven in the arena of combat. So I get you.
But it's the best we get, right? Like people think because like, well, this works in the UFC, and this works in high level competition. Yeah, no, for sure. So it works, and so this is my modus for self-defense. And I think that's a big failure too, where I think some people, I don't think they do a good job of it, but there's a lot of science. And so in my training courses, we focus a lot on the data and science about violence. And so the psychology and biology tell us a lot about what happens to your body in stress, right? That you can't recreate in combat sports. So if you look at adrenaline, which is epinephrine, basically. It's these little glands in your kidney, right? So when you get a threat stimuli, right, you're scared. that you could die, your body dumps this in to the bloodstream, right?
Fight or flight.
Epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, jacks your heart rate up, right? So it's called hormonal heart rate increase versus exercise-induced heart rate increase. So people think, well, I'm going to use exercise-induced heart rate increases to train for stress, but this is not the same stress. No. The things that happen to your body under stress are incredible. You have vasoconstriction, which is like the narrowing of blood vessels. So your hands start to shake, you turn pale. You have voiding of the bowel, like the bladder. Like people don't realize this stuff happens. People piss themselves.
All of that's happened to me. Except, well, all of it
happens. Involuntary too. Yeah. And you have perceptual distortions, right? Tunnel vision. All of these things, slow motion time, auditory exclusion, auditory enhancement, all these different perceptual distortions, all these things that happen in your body that you can't recreate.
But you can create it and train similarly to get used to it for game day. But if it's fight or flight on the street,
no, it's different.
It's different. Like there's a guy with a gun or a knife. Right. You can't train for that.
So here's the thing about those biological processes, right? Their effect on trained responses is detrimental. Their effect on untrained responses enhances them. So think about that. So if you have a gap between two people, so you have jiu-jitsu black belt, gold standard, right? And you have untrained guy, right? So you get into a conflict and they both have an adrenaline dump, right? So what does adrenaline do to black belt? Well, he brings his skills here.
So 70%.
And what does it do to this guy? Flailing. Well, adrenaline makes your flailing way better. So we just went here. So we've closed the skills gap. We've closed the skills gap and no one wants to train for it.
But you have to be able to ride that wave and weather the storm for that 3 minutes or 2 minutes of that skill gap. But before Joey Bag of Donuts gasses out.
Right. Yeah. But that's in a non-lethal competition. So now let's say we have a guy who's trained not in martial arts, but in enduring adrenaline. Mm-hmm. So you get a guy who's been a convict, he's been in prison 10, 20 years for violence. He's been in there stabbing people. This guy, right, is going to get his heart rate to the ideal place, right? So at 145 beats per minute, adrenaline is in peak. I mean, if you're a normal, healthy person, is in peak effect, right? So at 145 beats per minute, your adrenaline is giving you some vasodilation, a little more oxygenation of your large muscles. It's making your vision more clear, focused. You're stronger, right? So this guy, he's managed adrenaline. He's at peak, right? And he jumps you. And your heart rate goes to 175, 200 beats per minute. You don't get any of the benefits of adrenaline. You've got all of the bad stuff, all of the perceptual distortions. And this guy's in the peak zone, right? And he has a knife, right? And what do you do? What have you done? You pull guard, you go for ashi, you go up, it's over.
Yeah.
And I will take if you give me an open folding knife, training knife, I will take any grappler on the planet and I will turn him into sushi. End of story. And I won't use any jiu-jitsu to do it. What can be done with a knife is absolutely incredible. And so what I'm saying is like, not to say don't train jiu-jitsu, train jiu-jitsu, get that black belt, right? But train if you want it for combatives, you got to train in the context of surprised, you got jumped, the guy's in the peak moment, right? And you've got to train for that moment if it's self-defense. If you want to train for competition, I think it's great. I love it. It's my life, but I think you need to be honest with yourself about that and you honest with your students. Because a lot of self-defense in jiu-jitsu we call it cultural endemics of violence. Not every culture does violence the same. How people stab people look at Filipino martial arts. It's all built around large blades because it's agriculture. It's a warm, temperate, and like kind of jungle climate. So they're using these agricultural blades, right? That's very different than the way someone in the West Bank uses a knife, or Russia, or Chicago, or a Sereno who's been in prison, Southern California Mexican gangster who's been in prison for 20 years. They all use these weapons differently. So how violence occurs in Brazil is largely how Brazilian jiu-jitsu does self-defense. It's a challenge fight. It's an orthodox, conservative, macho culture where two guys are going to fight and everyone else is going to keep them back because this is how we settle our differences. Mm-hmm. And that is what I call social violence. It is avoidable, right? Getting in a bar fight is social violence. That's about social hierarchy. There's no reason to be involved in that if you really want to survive. Mm-hmm. The violence that's an issue is what's called predatory violence. And there's two kinds. There's resource predators that want something. I want your money, right? I want your car. And there's the worst kind, which are process predators. Process predators enjoy preying on people, killing women that look like their mother. Think really sick stuff. And these predators are ones who are antisocial personality disorder, the dark triad. They're sociopaths. They know how to manage adrenaline. They will surprise you. They will use weapons. They will use friends to assist them. And that's not addressed in how to prepare for that, because we're dealing with social violence. We're dealing with settling who's the alpha male on Copacabana Beach, right? Not to saying that those techniques aren't relevant to the predator, but I'm saying that the ideology, the methodology behind the training deals with social violence, where if I told you 98% of social violence is avoidable, right? So you're dealing with avoidable, you're spending a lot of time training for avoidable violence. It's just a simulacrum of UFC or a jiu-jitsu competition. But what I'm focused on, and I'm running a course on Sunday called Non-Permissive Environment Training. It's counter-custody anti-abduction, specifically for the cultural endemics and the criminal methodology of Mexican cartels in the border regions, not just Mexico, but in the northern parts of northern Baja, Tijuana, Mexicali, and Ciudad Juarez, all places I've worked.
So is this something that kind of spawned from your latest trip to Mexico?
Well, I've been working in non-permissive or hostile environments for like 3 or 4 years. So after I worked so I did the celebrity bodyguard tour, right? So I came back to the U.S. I lived in Australia. We've skipped a lot here. So from Israel, I went to Australia. I ran a gym in Australia for 2 years. Still competed as a boxer. Came back to the U.S., was getting into the firearms world, working with them. I ended up on a police department in New Mexico. Was a reserve officer where we did a lot of drug interdiction, high-risk warrant service with a U.S. Marshals task force.
So you were a cop at one point?
Yeah. 3 years as a reservist. An amazing, very unique police department that unfortunately doesn't exist in that form anymore. And we were working with the marshals, and we were doing kicking in doors and chasing bad guys and doing a lot of good cowboy, good police work. And so I got involved with now being connected to some of these people in the security world, working as a celebrity bodyguard. So I did.
So, this is in New Mexico?
Yeah.
So you met the people there that set you up to be able to.
Another officer in the department was on a detail for a hip hop icon from the East Coast. There's 2 coasts for those guys. And I started there. I went to some fashion icons.
And he says hip hop icon because you signed an NDA. So
yeah, I mean, I would love to tell. So if I give the name, I can't tell the stories. Yeah. And if I, right. So and vice versa. So it was a high threat. I mean, one of the few people that really saw as a threat against him. And so we got to do some, as far as most bodyguard work for celebrities is incredibly painfully boring. It is like, people think, I'm going to be a bodyguard. And I go, listen, I left that industry.
It's not like the movie with Whitney Houston?
No, that did not happen to me. Thank God, too, right? Because more names I can't use. But let's put it this way. His entourage, there was no one appealing in that way. So as soon as my legs could carry me, I left that industry. And if you're still in it, it's a tough industry to be in. I've stayed on jobs.
Why is that like the egos or just?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who you work for. You get some what I call unicorn clients, where some billionaire who made I had a friend. He was a Marine. He ran the Marine detail in the White House. Then he was he was an embassy Marine. He had evacuated embassies in Yemen, and so he was a really competent guy. And he got on with some guy who was a billionaire, made his own money, paid him a bunch of money, take the jet, go train, kind of. You get once in a while, you'll get lucky. I didn't get lucky in that way. But I'm in this kind of celebrity bodyguard world, right? And so it's, but just painfully boring. It's egos. It's just.
So you're not like the way you described having these 3 different types of possible fights and characters involved. So you're not talking to people and, this person might be the sociopath, we got to keep him away from my client, or this person might be the social fighter, this person, there's none of that.
So the amazing thing about paying attention to the science about violence is that it's predictive. It's extremely predictive. It's almost certainly predictive that I know when someone has an adrenal response that they're going to either run away, they're going to attack me, or they're going to freeze. In 2 of those situations, I win for sure.
So when this
in one situation, I don't, and we've had it happen. I've squared off with a gangster in New York at a after party where there's celebrities everywhere, right? And these gangsters come in and they're shouting and making a scene, and they come up to our guy's table.
Were they from the West Coast?
I have no idea where they're from. I did not get a look at their driver's licenses. And it was one of those deals where I had my hand on my pistol, and I was about to dump this guy, right? And it was precipitated by social violence. It was avoidable. And it kept us on the job because, you know, me and the other guy I worked with was laid into these dudes and like, just, he's like, the guy's like, usually the white bodyguards run and stand by the client. You guys were throwing hammers at these dudes. And I'm like, yeah, man, we're as gangsters white people get probably, you know, like, you're like Berkeley graduate, right?
You're like West Bank.
Yeah. West Bank. West Berkeley. Yeah. So I got out of that industry as soon as I could. I mean, that was a crazy night. I ruined my shoes. I got dragged behind a Maybach.
What's that?
And it's a really expensive Mercedes. It's like a Mercedes limousine. I got dragged trying to get in it with the client. And
were shots being fired?
No, but it was close. Like they went to their car to get a gun basically. They were dragged by my.
They're about to ditch you.
Right. And they were going to leave me, and I didn't. And I was as a point of pride, I would never wear my bulletproof vest because it was always too hot. And we would go to Vegas.
Dangerous.
We would I just didn't want to die of heat stroke. Let me take a bullet, you know.
Just rather
more survivable, yeah. So we'd go to Vegas, it's 120 in a black suit, and be like, "Where's your bulletproof vest?" I'm like, "In San Diego." Like, it's the rest of the stuff that's too hot to wear.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so I got into non-permissive environment work. I started working with a company called GM Risk Group. It was run by a friend of mine, Australian guy, former paratrooper. He's moved on, but the company still exists. I still run their U.S. operations in the Americas, North and South and Central America. And so we started doing, I started doing work with mostly journalists in conflict zones. So I've done Middle East, I've done South Central America, Asia. So a lot of like really rough stuff.
And these are for mostly political leaders?
No, it's for journalists. We did journalists and media. So the last trip, like in October, we went to Sinaloa, Mexico. So it's with 7 Network Australia. November, if you want to look at there's a link on the 7 Network site. It's November 11th show. And El Chapo went on trial about then. And so we got access to the Sinaloa cartel. And so we spent 2 weeks inside the cartel. So we show up in Culiacan and we get introduced and start making our way to the rural area of Sinaloa where they're actually growing the opium.
And you got to check out those fields.
Oh yeah, I got photos. Like I got good photos of that. So this is why I get detained at airports now. So I spent 2 hours in immigration in Australia getting my bag searched because of this stupid.
Are they looking through your phone or how's that?
Yeah, they flag my passport. They pull me aside. They go, "We need you to open your phone." And I go, "No problem." And then once I open, I go, "Oh shit, there's all those pictures." So it gets better. So it gets the picture. The opium wasn't even the bad part, right? In this pictures. So we'll get there. So we're going from the city. We go through a place called.
You're like the dick pics were the bad ones.
yeah. Did I delete the racist memes? Yeah. So we're going through Badiraguato, which is like if you look in like Narcos Mexico, like half the opening scenes are places we were like working.
Oh really?
Right? The opening credits.
Great show too.
Amazing. I'm working through it now, but you know. Anyway, so we're going out there and like this is like there's no state control. Like we get stopped at a checkpoint by sicarios, which are like the hit guys. Mm-hmm. They're Central Americans. They all had American gang tattoos. They've been deported from the U.S. They're high on. I don't know how they've been doing it, but they've got a bunch of heroin in their system. All of the clear-cut signs of pupils pinned and stuff. Kalashnikovs, safety's off, fingers on the trigger, like scary. So we get through. We go out there and we spend. We're with El Chapo's cousin, so we're staying at his house in La Tuna, which is where El Chapo grew up. And so they take us up to the opium fields. And we're hanging out with the opium farmers for the day, drinking tecates. It was a lot of fun. It's just, there's farmers, right? Yeah. So they take us to the opium field, but there's like Mexican military flights. We got like dive under rocks when the helicopter comes and we're running and going through barbed wire. And we get out there and film all this stuff. And so get back to, El Chapo's cousin's house, and he's got a son there, and he's got an air rifle, shooting an air rifle off the porch. So I give him like an hour-long shooting lesson.
So El Chapo's cousin is the one who's taken over for the Sinaloa cartel?
No, I don't think he's taken over. No. I think he was very cagey about what he did. Anyway, So there's someone there who's come up to me and said, you've been really nice to this kid. Let me give you something we don't give journalists ever. We're going to call you on Thursday. So we go back to the hotel. We wait. We've extended the trip. We've canceled all this other stuff. We've already shot all the
You're just waiting for this gift.
You're right. All the info and all the stuff we need to shoot in Mexico City at the prison and all this stuff, right? So we get the call. The guy goes, "Come meet us at this gas station in rural Sinaloa." And so I said, "We don't really have a lot of detail right now." So we ask our fixer, and he goes, "I don't know. Like, this doesn't usually happen." I call the guys in Australia, like my other security guys. I'm like, "I don't know, man." They're like, "Hey, you're on the ground. Make the call. Like, this is extremely dangerous." And I said, "Let's do it. Let's do it. We can always bail." So whenever I work, I always get a minivan. So I rented a minivan for the trip because they're the best. And so we drive out to this gas station. There's this guy and like 5 other narcos in cars. And they go, hey, don't worry, we're not going to kidnap you. But like they weren't joking, but we didn't know if it was a joke. So we follow these guys, right? We're driving out to these rural roads. And so police show up, start pulling these guys over. So I just drive off and wait. So the cops have pulled these guys over. I don't know what's happening. So eventually they show up. I don't know how. Bribery is pretty common in Mexico. So we follow them. It's dark. We get out and we get through this dark ranch house, like out in the middle of farmhouses. There's they call them falcons, the little watch out boys. We get in this house. They put on their masks. They go, you can start filming. We go in. We open the door. There's 360 kilos of cocaine packaged on the ground in this little farmhouse. Right.
This is our gift to you.
Yeah. I said, all right, load the van. This is why I got the van. So we filmed. And so they're talking, we interview them. They're talking about where it comes from. And so we film them. They load it in their cars. They drive to this estuary. They load it in a boat. We filmed the whole thing. It turned out this was the largest drug transaction ever caught on film. And,
do you know if it successfully made it through? Probably. I mean, you didn't.
Well, I know roughly where it went up Baja. This goes into a larger boat across Baja and up to Los Angeles. And I was joking with the journalist saying, if we don't go and party in LA, have we really done our job?
Yeah.
Right.
You got to meet this stuff.
You got to be in West Hollywood in like 2 days to wait. So anyway, but the clients were extremely happy with that because they was like, well, you basically organize this whole thing. And I said, that's basically what I do. And not only do I do risk consultancy and security and logistics with people, I help them. Like I have a producer's credit, I think, on a documentary film now and in Turkey, which was another country I may not be welcome in. Smuggled out all the film in my underwear, basically in my luggage, and it, that I got arrested in Turkey, get slapped around by the cops and stuff, like, so it's like this kind of thing now. So this is where main focus is. I did 2 weeks.
This company is mostly for Australian journalists.
No, we had Swedish, we have Russians, we have Americans. I did a project in Colombia with the Swedes. So I did 2 weeks with the FARC guerrillas, which is the Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia or something. My Spanish, not good. No good. And so we were embedded with them. So we're living out in the jungle with these guys, sleeping in the coca fields. And it was wild during the peace process as they're trying to disarm. And it was just really good stuff. And so it's like a lot of these like really high intensity, exciting kind of things. I've done a lot of work in like Juarez in Mexico, and like back when there was like a real it was ongoing conflict zone stuff. And so
during this these high stressful situations where lives are on the line,
right?
Are you pretty even keeled, or do you get that same fight or flight epinephrine, the whole thing we talked about? Are you a little sociopathic here? Or?
Yeah, so the thing about all of those kind of stress-induced responses, hormonal responses, is you get better at managing the experience. I've just done it enough. I've been involved in critical incidents where people have died, and it's medical interventions I've had to do, and over time you just get better at it, and I've gotten better. And but yeah, it's an experiential. The more experience you get, the better. And it's kind of how I started getting some of these realizations about how wrong-headed some of our training is. So I've got this anti-abduction course coming on Sunday where we're going to focus on the methodology of improvised weapons. And
so the clientele that are coming to these workshops, they're probably not the same types that are at your Sunday open mat jiu-jitsu.
No.
So are they in law enforcement? Are they in military? Are they SEALs?
We've had some people from military, like people who can't be in photos kind of people.
Oh, okay.
We have a lot of people that come from Mexico because they're like, listen, we live this. Like, we need help. And so I've been to Mexico to teach a fair bit now, and we're doing more and more with Mexico, the Mexicans, and there's other people that are trying
Mexicans or Mexican government.
Well, we're working on some stuff with the Mexican government. I'm working with I'm working with a Mexican, trying to get a project with the Mexican government now, and I'm working on a project with a country I can't discuss in Southeast Asia where we'll be working with their highest level protection people, the people that protect their elite level, the highest level of their government officials, and that's just in a matter of time. And then some others that are interested. And so The thing is that a lot of people try to exploit these markets. I'm going to go teach in Mexico. I said, yeah, man, but you're not addressing their needs. They're in a different reality, man. Like the crime.
I can show them a fireman's carry or something.
You could. It would be great. To be honest, like they would need it. They don't have an indigenous kind of wrestling martial arts culture.
I don't know how much that defend the knife attack.
Exactly. Right.
So large blades.
Listen, there was 30,000 murders last year in Mexico. There was 14,000 in the U.S. 70-some thousand in Brazil. I mean, some of these countries, it's like people are getting dropped all the time, and it's insane, the callousness with these people.
I was having a conversation with someone today about Mexico, how in 2018 it was the #1 murder capital of the world, Mexico.
Oh yeah.
And
it's worse.
Most of the cities, Ciudad Juarez and Tijuana, just bordering some of the richest cities in the world, which is El Paso and San Diego, just happens right over that imaginary line.
Yeah, I mean, and it's worse for journalists in Mexico. It's the people that can the editor of the journalist we use as a fixture was shot to death a month before we got there in front of City Hall in the city we were staying in. And the reason that this is so bad on the border towns is it's where people and drugs cross the border. And I was in Juarez years ago working, and it was so bad. There was 10 murders a day, 3,500 murders in a city of 1 million people. They had a division of the sanitation department that cleaned up bodies. Like every morning you would come out, there'd be headless bodies. And half the murders are being committed by the police that are on the payroll. Right? The police are so corrupt. I mean, I don't know how many times we've bribed cops in Mexico.
Yeah, plenty. But when I was like going to Wednesday night, college night, TJ was...
Right.
Yeah, plenty of times.
We went to Mexico City, and there's a part of Mexico City called Tepito. And Tepito is a section of Mexico City that the police don't go in. And there's a big monument there for all the dead narcos. And it's a big cross. It has all the names of the big name narco guys who got killed. And so they have a bunch of shrines. So narcos not worship, but they venerate a saint named Malverde. Malverde was like a bad dude. But he was like the patron saint of all the Sinaloans. And so there's all these monuments to Malverde and this big cross. And so as we're leaving, we get in there and film. And all these people talk about, I went to Tepito. There's so many bullshitters on social media. It's another thing I've got a problem with. Bullshitters on social media that try to act tough, like there's some badass operator. Like I don't post any of that crap on my social media because I do it for real. I don't need to post this nonsense. I see people like, oh, I was in Tepito. I'm like, it's not that bad. Like I just went, they won't let you film. I just found the local gangster. I'm like, can we film? He's like, yeah, I'll block traffic. And you just gotta communicate with these people. So as we're leaving, right? We're in a black Suburban. The cops pull us over, like 12 Mexican. They ride in the back of these trucks. They pull us over and like surround our car. Like, oh, we need to see your paperwork. And I'm just like, just give them 500 pesos. And we got it on film, just bribing this like municipal goofball. Like the Mexican Barney Fife. Right. And, it's dangerous, but it's all risks are manageable. But
with a couple $100 pesos.
That's it, expense reports. It's on the expense. How do you put bribes in the expense report? I don't know. I mean, I don't do the paperwork for that because I don't pay the bribes.
Yeah, I'm sure it's all in their pocket.
Right.
You don't have to worry about that.
And but anyway, so a lot of the lessons from these places start to infect, or start to permeate the training. And so that's where kind of like the training stuff and the work stuff meet.
Yeah, those border towns are brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have much experience with it, so I just learn from stories like that.
Well, Tijuana has the third most murders in Mexico. The #1 is Acapulco. #2 is Los Cabos. Right? Wow. Yeah, very dangerous. I think when we were in Culiacan, it was number 7 or 8.
So those are all resort, Acapulco, Los Cabos?
Yeah. I mean, Culiacan, where we were, it's 4 times the murder rate of Detroit, which is the worst in the U.S., so it's way worse. And now with the migrant caravan in Tijuana, it's going to be worse because there's going to be a lot of attendant crime with that. So, I mean, this year's crime stats in Tijuana are going to be awful. And I've done work in Tijuana. I've been in the riverbed. We almost got stabbed in the Tijuana River. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a bad town. I almost got stabbed by an American in there.
What, like one of those people that are with their... what are those Confederate flags? And
No, we were on the Mexican side. We were doing a story on deported migrants. So a lot of people get deported from the U.S. They were born in Mexico, but they moved to the U.S. when they're 1 year old, right? Yeah. And they're 32 and they get a DUI and like, you're not a citizen, you're out of here. Mm-hmm. This dude doesn't even have like a Mexican ID number, and they just dump him. And the Mexican government's like, well, we don't know this guy. So they live in the rivers. They live in the riverbed. So we're down there and there's this guy who says, hey, you're American. I'm like, you're American. What are you doing down here? He goes, well, I have 2 felonies. And I just illegally entered, and they're looking for me for my third, which is going to be bad. It's third strikes, right? So he goes, I've slipped through the border. I was like, what do you mean? You just walk across? No, but the Mexicans don't stop you. So he says, I'm going to live down here. Like, I have no paperwork. She's living in this riverbed with these deported migrants who would probably all get DUIs. And we did a story one time on the coyotes bringing them in to the U.S. And it was a bit like almost had to violate the ethics of journalism. So they're interviewing, another Australian network is interviewing these guys who are going to try to cross the border. And they're like, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? So they're saying all Central Americans. Like, why were you deported? Felony. I'm like, Border Patrol hotline on my phone. Yeah. But none of them got through. Thank God. I mean, it was just the most pathetic border crossing attempt I'd ever seen. They'd gotten some old coyote out of retirement for the story who didn't know where to cross. These guys, they ran over the border. And you just see the drone just like, I'm like, I'm done, which was good. We don't want more felons in the U.S. So it's
probably better for the story, depending on what angle they were taking, like that everyone got caught and rounded up. So at least, I don't know.
Yeah, some of them made it back because like they go over. And then do you ever see Indiana Jones where he's running from the tribesmen?
Yeah, in the very beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what they looked like coming back.
Yeah.
Like this, running back. And so most of them made it back. It was like a waste of an afternoon.
See, I go back to like this early 80s movie, Born in East LA.
Oh, yeah.
Great. We're at the end with what's it, Neil Diamond.
Yes.
We coming to America.
Where they're selling green cards. Yeah. Green cards, get your green cards.
You are now Fernando Valenzuela. You had 16 wins last
Congratulations, you had 21 wins last year. That was a fantastic. Cheech Marin.
Yeah, great movie.
Before he did Nash Bridges. Remember that? He was Don Johnson with Nash Bridges.
I like Daniel Stern in that movie. He's like, I forgot the way he explained his story of how he ended up there at some like titty bar or something.
Right.
He's like, they were looking for me and I just kept running.
So anyway, these guys, yeah, exactly. And so, but there's this ton of the action in the border towns. People don't know how dangerous Tijuana is, and you have to be careful. It's not like you're going to go down there and get murdered, but if you do the wrong thing in the wrong place, it can get ugly, and it's really bad for Mexicans who have to live in like Libertad and like these cities or these parts of the cities that aren't so nice.
Saying it's like Los Cabos and Acapulco.
Oh, yeah.
How? Why there in these like Americanized tourists?
Because I think there's an underbelly to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Los Cabos a bunch, and one time I was buying some trinket, me and my wife, and one of the guys at one of these booths that were selling these trinkets lifts up a towel, and there's just a bunch of Coke.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, hey, you want some Coke? I'm like,
better quality down there, too. Yeah.
I wouldn't know anything about that. But
I wouldn't either.
So it was like there was that seedy underbelly for sure. It's just I didn't know it until that moment because everything seemed pretty green zone-ish in that area. So
it's right there, too. There's markets in Mexico City where like you can't, if you walk 2 stalls deep, there's a guy with a rifle is like, hey, man, some narco. Like it's right there. It's just below the surface. And people don't know that. And Mexico's an amazing. My dad lives in Mexico. He's retired. He lives in Southern Baja. Right. I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks. And it's great. He's in the little American enclave. The local town is a fishing village. It's really nice. If you know what you're doing, and that's where my bread and butter is. I know what I'm doing when I go to these places. I do the research. I've been there. I've done the work. And
you're scanning every room.
Yeah, I have some methods. I have some methods to develop. First of all, like experience, and then also some methods where I develop awareness through social media and things like that about cultural traits, because everything is cultural. Like you've traveled a lot for judo, right? Mm-hmm. Like how many places have you been where like, oh, this is considered offensive and this isn't, right? And you don't know. You're some American.
Eye contact, shaking hands, all these things, body language.
Where you put your chopsticks in the rice.
All these things have different meanings in different places.
So you have this experience, right? Yeah. So that's true for getting your ass kicked or stabbed or shot too. Mm-hmm. There are things that will set people off. There are things that won't. There are things you need to know. And there's a lot of ways to do that research and understand that. But that's a lot of the work is understanding that, hey, what are the social taboos here? Because, you could do something really stupid and it's it. That's over.
Just being ignorant might get you.
And being stupid is a good way to get killed, in my opinion.
And that's not an excuse either. You got to be able to be,
It's Darwinian.
Yeah.
Thinning the herd, right?
The Darwin Award winner.
Yeah.
Getting killed doing something stupid. That's obvious. So leading on to this timeline as far as like where you are now,
right?
You and how we know each other actually.
Okay.
Seeing all these different experiences and you getting to the top of all these different domains, baseball. You played football in Israel, and
Right.
there's actually football in Israel. I didn't
Yeah,
even know
there's an 8-man football league called the Israel Football
that.
League.
It's professional.
It's semi-professional. I don't know.
Are there fans?
Yes, the Israelis love football. So we had one of the quarterbacks in the league was Itai Ashkenazi, and I don't know if you know the name.
Sure. No.
Gabi Ashkenazi was the head of the Israeli army during a lot of these big wars, and so he's like, Gabi Ashkenazi's famous in Israel, and so they'd always interview him, and he's like, why do you think Israelis like football? He goes, Israelis like war. This is like war, so Israelis like it, but yeah, I quarterbacked the team in Tel Aviv, and we were the only mixed ethnicity team. We had Arabs because Jaffa, which is southern Tel Aviv.
Yeah, no, I've been to Yaffo.
Yaffo, right? So we would just go to the hummus place and like find the big Arab guys. Like, do you want to play some football? They don't know what it is, but they want to play.
Yeah.
And smash that guy. Okay, and it was easy. And then we ended up winning the Israel Bowl. And it's the whole thing is sponsored by Robert. I swear to God, there's a trophy.
Robert Kraft?
Robert Kraft sponsors the whole
Really?
thing. Yeah. He brings Patriot guys over. He pays for the stadium.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so the gear, we had all this gear from Robert Kraft and
You're wearing
stuff.
like hand-me-downs from Tom Brady.
Right. I had Tom Brady's jockstrap. I slept with it on my head.
It's mounted over your headboard right now.
Just get a whiff of that before I go to sleep. But improved my
Of greatness.
Yeah, my passing percentages went up. And so anyway, different domains. I think we were before we got to jock straps.
So you've been able to kind of elevate yourself to the top of all these and at such a young age. And what's the next journey? I mean, what are you doing now as far as you like to diversify and do all these different things? What's coming next?
I don't know. I grew up with ADHD pretty bad, and as an adult, there's some attendant consequences. So a lot of people with ADHD end up with alcohol and drug addiction and trouble with the law. And so one of the things that all of this has done for me is kind of insulate me from some of those other impulses and problems. So a lot about what I do is keeping the novelty and the diversity in my interests, so I can keep my interests, so I don't slip into bad habits. Like I've had some real bad issues with depression, and so I'm coming back from these places, and I'm not finding purpose in life. I'm feeling disconnected, distant from people. In a rut, but also disconnection from people who don't share my experiences or
But there's not many people sharing those experiences.
No, and it's a really niche industry, and I find a lot of military veterans have similar experiences in police and firefighters, and
you've never been served in the military.
No, 3 years as a reserve cop, and that was it. And so kind of the future has to include some of those things, the diversity of work, and I'm going to keep doing the deployments with work, and I'm working on some projects in some new places that are going to be very interesting. I can't really give it all because they're kind of not classified, but they're with government units that are going to be, they don't want their name on any kind of publicity. And, but we're going to keep doing that. I'm still running a gym.
Where is that?
Here in San Diego. So I run 2 programs, Krav Maga Academy San Diego and Kearney Mesa. I'm also a staff instructor at Active Shooter Defense School, and we run combat shooting courses here in San Diego. We're one of the only places that has a real nice outdoor range. We're really lucky to have these 2 training opportunities, and they work together. We do combatives with firearms. We do bring the firearms to the combatives, and so it's a good partnership. Matt Clear runs that. He was a Naval Special Warfare 12 and a half years, the best shooting instructor I've ever met. Also one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet, and annoying. But so we're going to keep doing that. I'm going to be up for my brown belt in Jiu Jitsu soon.
Nice.
I'm going to keep doing the Judo, the wrestling. I want to keep working on that. I think right now, as far as competition goes, I'm too hurt. I've had a lot of injuries. I broke my hands. I was in 3 years in Israel. I was in the ER 7 times. Broken hands, broken nose, broke my hands 3 or 4 times. My back's screwed now. I think I have a herniated disc in my neck. Meniscus is done in my knee. So I think the competition ship has sailed. So maybe coaching. I don't know. I'm going to keep coaching, and I still want to build out how we merge good martial arts training with good science and good data. And how do we take people to say, hey, so I can look at someone and say, you're an idiot, you're training wrong. And then they turn to me and say, well, how do I train better? And I go, well, I can only tell you you're an idiot. I can't make you smart, right? I mean, what use is that person, right? Just a critic. Yeah. So there's a funny line in Narcos Mexico where he's talking to the boss, and he's giving him all these problems. And the boss goes, Well, where are the solutions? And the guy goes, I'm the number 2 guy. My job is to point out the problems, not to solve them. And right, I feel like that was like me. And so I'm trying to develop a training program, and I think we have, around edge weapons and firearms and combatives and trauma medicine, and introducing trauma medicine to training, and how we do train people with their psychology better, train them for stress inoculation better. And I think the development from there is how do we apply that to business and other things, because stress management, being able to manage stress, whether your body doesn't know the difference between stress because your wife's yelling at you or your boss is yelling at you or you're about to be stabbed, to be able to manage those adrenal responses is what we call a broad-based inoculation. So we do stress inoculation, helps you everywhere. And so I think the next thing is developing the training well, and then expanding it to people who don't really want necessarily to do it like, oh, I'm going to Sinaloa and I want to be able to like knife fight a narco. Like, it's like, hey, I got a lot of stress at work. How do I manage it? And how do we export that to the private sector?
Yeah.
I think that's the next move, but we're going to keep, I need the excitement.
That sounds very forward thinking and applicable to entrepreneurial, your background, to be able to move forward in a less, like you say, you're not going to go compete anytime soon. So
it hurts so
being
bad.
able to teach this to the right clientele and be able to grow your methodology.
Right.
That'll be cool, man.
Well, we'll still train judo and wrestling with you.
For sure.
That's for sure. Whenever my back gets better, I'm not hobbling around.
Well, you've come pretty far and pretty short, so in a pretty short amount of time. Well, I look forward to more training. But yeah, so I think that pretty much concludes this episode of the Flow Factory podcast. Thanks for coming on, Alex.
My pleasure, man.
It was rad. Anything you want to plug? Your Instagram or?
Yeah, Instagram, Alex_Trafton. That's me at Instagram. You can see training. I talk a lot about science and of what we do, and you can see some cool photos with me with a bunch of drugs in the background, running around driving minivans, chasing narcos. Man, it's good. It's good times. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, give them a follow.
When are you writing a new book, man?
When am I writing a new book?
Yeah. Dude, this would be a bestseller here.
For sure.
Yeah, the book needs to happen.
I'll do the cover art, bro.
Yeah, I'd love to do a book. I'm trying to do. There's a lot on the plate right now. That's the book.
Well, keep it cooking, man.
We got to do it. We got to do it.
Don't have too many irons in the fire. You lose focus.
That's been a big problem, but we'll work on it.
I feel you. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure, man.
It was a great conversation, and look forward to our next training session, bro.
Let's do it.
All right.
Thanks.